Hello, you're listening to Count Richard Von Coudenhove Kalergi. Today is Sunday, the 14th of July, and happy Bastille Day to the French there. In Italy, what was once Europe's largest migration reception centre in Sicily, Minero officially closed last Tuesday in the presence of Matteo Salvini, who said that it was a promise kept. The reception centre's final inhabitants were removed and sent to other locations. The reception centre, a former US complex for US military, held 4,100 migrants at its peak in 2014. Earlier this year, the director of the centre said, quote, "Left-wing do-gooder activists have helped lead thousands of deaths in the Mediterranean, and from 2014 to 2017, we have recorded 15,000 deaths. And with Salvini tightening Italy's borders, helping reduce the deaths at sea, the director turned his criticism to the migrant transport NGOs, saying, quote, open borders have created slums scattered throughout the country, and added that, quote, in our country there are 600,000 people who have lost their right to reception. They are like zombies in our country. Many have opposed Salvini's stance, with some left-wing mayors saying they would ignore him, but polls have revealed that over 63% of all Italians back Salvini. The problem is still with the interference of the NGOs, a term that seems to give them legitimacy, but are nothing more than criminal cartels in the international smuggling business. And the unfortunate thing is that there are people working or volunteering with these NGOs who really believe that they are doing good work. They are the placard wavers whom the public see to create sympathy for migrants, and always seem to attract a certain type of bespectacled goblin-type creature, a special demographic whose sole purpose is to push mass migration into the West, and remain oblivious to the demographic shift, migrant crime, and overburdening taxpayers supporting an ever-increasing social welfare system. In Germany, Angela Merkel has been seen shaking for the third time in less than a month, yet again during the German national anthem. This time in Berlin with a meeting with the Finnish Prime Minister. How many times has this happened in private? And her physical degeneration has coincided with her political degeneration. Just as the ADF is surging in eastern Germany and turning it into its stronghold, and are set to win the most seats for that region, well ahead of Merkel's CDU party. The media have decided to say that she is showing great bravery, just like Juncker and his battle with sciatica, which he seems to treat with bottles of brandy. Can you imagine the media's response if this was happening to Trump, Orban or Salvini? They would have a feeding frenzy like sharks circling a wounded seal. And still in Berlin, a German court has convicted a rejected Iraqi asylum seeker of raping and murdering a 14-year-old girl, and on Wednesday sentenced him to life in prison. Ali Bashar, who was jailed after 4 months' trial where he was found guilty of assault, rape and murder of Susanna Feldman in May 2018, and I covered the story in one of my previous videos. Bashar, 22, and his family abruptly left a home for asylum seekers and fled to Iraq, where he was arrested by Kurdish authorities in northern Iraq at the request of the German police in June last year. He had arrived in Germany in 2015 and in that 3-year period had chalked up a long police record, including a suspected being involved in the rape of an 11-year-old girl. And also in Germany, in Mulheim, an 18-year-old girl was gang raped by a group of 5, get this, between 12 to 14-year-old migrants on Friday, in a prolonged ordeal involving considerable violence that left the victim unconscious in bushes, and was then found by dog walkers who notified the authorities, and she was rushed to hospital where she is still in intensive care. Before Merkel shakes herself to death, she should be brought to court and have a new Nuremberg trial for crimes against humanity. More from that canary in this coal mine, Sweden. A man living in Sweden was found guilty of physically abusing his wife and children. The unidentified man, who lives in the southwest province of Dalsland, was sentenced to 6 months in prison after being convicted of 5 separate counts of assault, which included shoving paper into the mouth of his 2-year-old daughter. He denied culpability, claiming that intense hunger due to fasting during Ramadan had made it so that he could no longer control his own actions. The defence of Ramadan rage was also used by another Muslim in France as part of a case where he shook his 5-month-old baby to death last year. Within the first 3 weeks of Ramadan this year, there were 20 countries that saw over 100 jihadi attacks that killed 531 people and injured another 556. Were all these jihadis suffering from hunger pangs as well? And in Poland, the Warsaw District Court has rejected a demand by Sweden to extradite a man, a Russian national who took his 3 daughters back from a Muslim family and sought asylum in Poland. The story began in Sweden when the Lvov family in 2017 suffered a tragedy when the mother of 3 children was taken to hospital suffering from a mental breakdown, whereupon the 3 daughters, aged 4, 6 and 12, were taken into foster care and sent to a Muslim family from Lebanon, over 240 miles away from the family home. And even though the girls spoke no Arabic and were forced to wear headscarves and eat food that they didn't like, in April of this year the father fled Sweden to go to Russia on a flight through Poland, and upon attempting to board the plane with his 3 children in Warsaw, Sweden accused him of kidnap. The father applied for refugee status, which was granted, with the judge saying, quote, "With their actions, Swedish authorities directly violated the rights of the children, depriving them of fatherly love, and criticised the Swedish authority for placing the children in the care of a family, quote, that was culturally, mentally and religiously an alien culture which could adversely have affected the health of the children." It seems Sweden has an organisation that operates like Tusla as well. France, a Syrian migrant has been arrested in the town of Saint-Pierre-du-Mont on Thursday for the rape and murder of a 24-year-old mother of 1 whose body was found near a small pedestrian tunnel after she left a nightclub to return home. She had been raped and strangled and had been beaten on the head and neck. 2 other men are also suspects in this. And back to the moral inversion, which continues. A Dr. David McReith in England, in the UK, at 56, a health and disability assessor employed by the Department for Work and Pensions in Birmingham, has been dismissed from his job after refusing, in a theory test interview, to use the transgender person's preferred gender pronoun. Dr. McReith, an experienced emergency department medic, told a tribunal shortly after his appointment he was asked by his line manager, quote, "If you had a 6-foot man with a beard who says he wants to be addressed as she, would you do that?" The evangelical Christian gave his answer that he would not, as it was against his religion. He was then told that this answer would mean that he would over likely be dismissed, to lose his job, unless he changed his convictions. The father of 4 was dismissed 1 month later. Dr. McReith said that, quote, "What I object to is being forced to do violence to language, and that the recognition of transgenderism as normal was delusional, and that was not a result of scientific evidence but political pressure. I wonder if the doctor was a Muslim, would he have been asked the same question? It looks like being sane is now a sackable offence. This is nothing short of tyranny. It will infiltrate all our public services, workplaces, and if our schools, if they get a chance to do it, creating the next generation of degenerates to do the bidding of the globalist corporations, devoid of moral compass." It reminds me of a quote from Bertrand Russell. "The social psychologists of the future will have a number of classes of school children to whom they will try different methods of producing an unshakable conviction that snow was black." And now for some domestic issues. It has been announced that Tipperary is to resettle 230 refugees from 12 families over the next 18 months, allegedly from Syria, with Thurles, a town of 8,000 people, which already has hosted 12 families. This was announced at a council meeting as part of Ireland's refugee protection programme, and they will be granted refugee status prior to arrival, therefore entitling them to housing, social welfare, medical card, and the right to work and permission to remain in the country. With the Sinn Féin councillor saying that integration works, Well, he mustn't have heard Sarkozy, Merkel, before she decided to welcome everybody to Germany, with the average age of 50 compared to Africa where the average age is 19, and Cameron, who all within a 6-month period said multiculturalism is a complete failure. And the Sinn Féin councillor went on to say that an Iraqi lad scored a point in Croke Park, so that's grand. Then another councillor added that we didn't want to see their houses attacked. Could it possibly be that local populace aren't as overjoyed about their community being replaced as these excitable councillors? Are they not aware that Syria now has a tourist industry and that during 2018 900,000 Syrians have returned home to help rebuild their country, as all patriotic people should do? Even President Assad has offered a pardon to any of the army deserted to return home without penalty. And I'd be very interested to know how many of these Syrian refugees will suddenly be able to return to Syria on holidays on taxpayers' expense. I also noticed that Lisa Murphy is trying to get back over here, and that I noticed that in the area between Nigeria, Niger and Chad, Boko Haram are trying to set up an Islamic State. So maybe instead of coming back to Ireland, maybe she'd be more suited somewhere around there. I'd say they'd be delighted to have her back. I noticed Gemma this week did another very nice interview with that priest from Greystones, and I believe now they've decided that they're not going to get the children to wear the boys to wear trousers. Now let's hope they can remove the condoms from the 6th class bathrooms as well. And David Stanton was on the news last Sunday talking about Ireland's international obligations to irregular migrants. I'm sick of every RTE broadcast including something about migrants, asylum seekers, direct provision, racism. It's about time that people got over the famine and stopped feeling guilty for surviving it. We never bombed any country to the Stone Age, and if we are going to have an immigration programme, it must include medical screening, Garda vetting, and a background check for any criminal convictions, and deportation for those who don't meet the criteria and those guilty of serious criminal offences in this country. Even the Department of Justice, by their own figures, believe that over 80% of all asylum seekers are bogus, and of the 1,400 giving deportation notices last year, only 140 people actually left. Especially to those countries that don't cooperate, funding should be withdrawn in the deportation process. This week also saw the Dáil bar being disrupted by a rat. Well, I regard Higgins as the biggest rat, followed but not my Taoiseach Varadkar, especially in the wake of Higgins' remarks that we in Ireland are obliged to widen our perspective of home to include all the peoples of the earth. Is there no end to the amount of political pimping that these two will do for the globalists? Shame on you all. Well, there are a couple of comments which are my own. I notice I have a couple of new subscribers this week, so thanks for joining. I look forward to reading your comments. Good night and good luck.